Welcome to New York Got Game.
Welcome back to another edition of New York Got Game. It's on to the second round. Knicks advanced in the playoffs. They disposed of the Pistons in 6 games last week. So next up are the defending champion Boston Celtics in round 2. Game 1 goes down on Monday night. So we've got to get right into things here. And joining me, I got the 2 best people I have to talk to when it comes to a preview. It is my guy, J Mac, founder, dean of Knicks Film School. My God, founder of KnicksFanTV, CP the franchise. What's going on, guys? How y'all doing?
Feeling good, man.
Feeling good?
How we doing?
I'm good. We were just talking about this. This is busy times, okay? This is busy times. We are all immersed in the basketball. This is very busy times. Have you guys been okay? Has it been a stressful ride? Because I feel like the last series was a stressful ride.
Stress? What? This isn't stressful. This is fun. We're all having a great time.
No, you're not. No, you're not. No, you're not. I've seen your shows. I've seen your shows. You've been stressed a little bit. I'm sure you've had some stressful times a little bit. Did you enjoy the last series at all?
I did. But you know what? What I enjoyed the most was living on the edge with the fan base, man. Because I was talking to our guy John Schmelk.
Yeah.
And we were talking about like the difference in terms of the Knicks winning in 6 in Philly versus Detroit and the energy around it. You know, last year was a little bit different because of the team that they walked in there with, and you know, people were picking Philadelphia as well, so they weren't in that driver's seat. But this year was like, boy, if you lose. And every loss in this series was like the wheels are falling off. It's over. It's over. Tibbs is out of here. Change the team. And I'm just sitting there like, the series is the first of 4, right? Lock in. They won in 6 games. It's over with. Everyone wants to say, well, Detroit, they outplayed, and they won this quarter, they won that quarter. It's the first of 4. It's over, man.
I think what I learned of myself doing these watch-alongs we've been doing here in the series is, and watching what you guys do so much with post-games throughout the season, right? You guys get those direct interactions from the fans with the super chats and people sending all that stuff in. And you're just like, man, the roller coaster of emotions from everybody in this is a lot. I've watched, you saw it too, right?
Yeah.
You saw this too as well.
No, I mean, I think even up through last year, I don't want to bring it back to like a certain thing that happened this past summer, but because the Knicks had all their picks and because the Knicks, there was still this perception like we weren't there yet. I think for a lot of fans, there was like in the back of their mind and the depths of their soul was like, this is all house money. Like, this is all great. Like, whatever happens this year, we're not supposed to win a championship yet. Like, we still haven't made our big move. And I think the fact that they did what they did this past summer, that has been hovering over this entire season. I think it was hovering over the first round. And then when you factor in how they played, some of the inconsistency they played with, I think that's the biggest reason for why, as CP said, you got a lot of the consternation, my favorite word, that we saw in that round. So, yeah.
I think for some, not speaking for me, but for a lot of people, it took the joy out of the season because, like Macri said, last year, for the couple of years in the Brunson era, it was a lot of house money. Like, wow, this guy, he's amazing. Oh, this team's on a run. They made the playoffs for the first time in X amount of years prior to, but now the expectations, man. Like I say, pressure was busting pipes, and you felt it.
You feel it, but I'm also still, part of me is like, this is what you wanted. Do you remember what this was 8 years ago, 7 years ago, 5, 6 years ago?
I think
this is what you should want.
I think there's this like, this is not a real thing, but I think if you're a fan and you're like visualizing that time when it's like, okay, we've made it. The Mad Men line, what is happiness? It's the moment before you want more happiness. Like you're never gonna feel like you're there, not until it's the final game of the NBA Finals and your team is standing there with the trophy. There's always gonna be something left to be desired. Now, I think there were some particularly stressful moments in this first round where I will give Knicks fans a break. Where I was right there with y'all. It was rough at times, but still. Second round, 3rd year in a row. I think we're one of 3 teams that could say that, along with the Celtics and the Nuggets over the last 3 years. That's not easy to do. So it's appreciated, and you never know what's going to happen in the next round.
You got to enjoy the ride. I like what Stephen said there. You got to try to enjoy the ride. You got to enjoy the ride. Always enjoy talking with you guys and being here. So let's get into it and preview these things, guys. Let's start with this. We had that great series clinching win. Captain Clutch doing his thing. Can the Knicks build off of that? Or when you look at Boston in the series now against Boston, this is a whole new series, whole new ball game. Do you think there's any way they can build off the momentum that they had in Game 6 against Detroit?
Well, you're right. It is a whole new series against Boston, but I think there's some positives that the Knicks can take from that Detroit series, in particular the physicality. Right, a lot of people question, could the Knicks match that? Is it going to wear them down? And to me, they rose to the occasion. They tapped into that and grew as a team. And look, Brunson is a constant. To me, like we've seen in the past playoffs, like he's that guy, and he showed it when he kept Detroit home at the end of Game 6. But how about Mikal Bridges, man? Yeah. Like Mikal Bridges coming in with all the criticism about the trade and is he going to live up to the 5 picks? Mikal Bridges was outstanding in crunch time in that Game 6. The cuts to the basket, finding open lanes for Jalen Brunson to pass him to. He had he was a nice receiver off a dribble handoff for a 3-pointer. The dunk on Cade Cunningham, his defense. And look, Boston cooked him in the regular season games. So maybe he's riding that momentum. He's going to get the Brown matchup. He'll get some of the Tatum matchup, and hopefully he's able to carry that momentum forward. So I do think there were some positives.
All right, so you do think it's hopeful. What about you in terms of momentum?
I love what CP said about Bridges. I agree with that. Look, this group, it's a new group. They brought in Towns. They brought in Bridges. So they had never won a playoff series before. Now they have that under their belt. That counts for something. It's experience. They can feel good about that. All that being said, this is a different animal. Detroit, most of the time, put 2 players on the floor that were not shooting threats, or at the very least, there was always 1 player on the floor that was not a shooting threat. Boston, the majority of the time, all 5 players will be shooting threats. On the other end of the floor, Detroit had all the time at least 1 player, oftentimes 2 players that you could target as weak spots on the defense. Boston, pretty much for 48 minutes, because Peyton Pritchard's a better defender than a lot of people think he is, you're not going to have any soft spots to go after. So the challenge will be much higher. They will need to play much better to even be in the series, let alone win it.
You said the challenge will be much higher. They need to play much better. I think everybody understands that. CP, I got this for you because we can't ignore this. We look at the regular season. Knicks got swept by this team. There was one, if you want to say, really competitive game. That was the last one at the Garden. What do the Knicks need to do differently here to make this a competitive series?
Well, first off, I think it's going to start with their defense. I mean, the first 3 games of the 4 games, they got outscored. Well, in the entire 4 games, they got outscored by 117 points from 3, right? So it's going to start there with their 3-point defense. But Karl-Anthony Towns, he's going to be a marked man in this thing out the gates. How he covers this Celtics pick and roll with Tatum at the helm, I think is going to really dictate what the Knicks can do here. But to me, it's going to start with them being on the same page defensively, locking in on the rotations, running these guys off the 3-point line. But that's why it's difficult. It's a difficult series because oftentimes with this team, from the regular season through the Detroit series, they've had those lapses where they're just not on the same page. The communication is still not there. All year. And against the Celtics, like Macri said, you're going to have to play close to a perfect game every game. So look, it's going to start there defensively. The bench, who's going to give you some of those like Peyton Pritchard minutes, right? Right now, Peyton Pritchard is outscoring the entire Knicks bench from 3. Deuce has been disappointing. Campaign, flip the coin. Is it going to be Shamet? Does Shamet get a little extra look there? So they're going to need some scoring, some firepower there. And then, from the starters, like Macri said, there's no real weaknesses in that Celtics defense. And so, the big bodega. This is why you traded for Karl-Anthony Towns. You're going to need some monster numbers from Towns in this series for the Knicks to even have a chance.
All right, we're going to get to some of those players too. And look, that is just me asking how they can make this competitive, right? I didn't ask about how they could win this, right? We'll get to that, but how can they make this competitive? J-Mac, this question is for you because you're known as the Tom Thibodeau truther out there. At least you've sort of owned that nickname.
You got it.
There's been a lot of talk about the head coach through the playoffs. You guys know this both, particularly in the last series. What's going to happen? If he lost the last series, maybe he loses his job. I think people do want to see something from Tom Thibodeau. So my question to you is, what adjustments do you think Tom Thibodeau either needs to make in the series or you'd like to see him make in the series that would show you, okay, this is a coach for this team that can coach in a high-level postseason series, as I think we all would agree this is?
Yeah, it doesn't get any higher level than this. Look, Tom always likes to tell his players, tell the media, tell anyone willing to listen that the game tells you what to do, right? Well, if his players sit there or go out there on the court and wait for the game to tell them what to do, I fear that this will not end well. Sometimes you need to whisper in the game's ear and maybe push it a certain way or another to your liking, because on balance, the Celtics are a better basketball team. They have fewer flaws and they have more strengths. So if we just go about our business and like whatever the game is going to dictate how we're supposed to play, I just don't think that that's good enough. Because if you look at the regular season, for example, Karl Anthony Towns attempted 11 three-pointers in the 4 games against the Celtics. Was that the game telling the Knicks what to do? Well, the threes weren't there for me. No, that's not good enough. You as the coach sometimes have to be a little bit more on the offensive and figure out, all right, how am I springing my center, who is a 40% shooter from 3, for open shots? Where it's not just waiting until he gets open or waiting until maybe he's the trail guy on the break and you get him an open look. So I'm looking for him to affirmatively make adjustments to put him and his team in the best chance to win. I think springing Towns is a big one, specifically for threes. The other way I'm looking at this is Josh Hart. And Josh Hart is a guy who the Celtics are not only going to ignore, they're going to welcome him to shoot. And not just welcome him to shoot behind the arc. He shot a ton, more against the Celtics than I think almost any other team in the league this year. So when he gets the ball, when the ball kicks to him because he's wide open, what is the plan there? Is it just Josh Hart's going to shoot 8, 9, 10 threes a game? If not, there needs to be instantaneous action. Are you bringing him into the action? If Towns has the ball at the top of the key to bring these two things together, is Josh Hart screening for Karl Anthony Towns? And you're trying to, whether it's draw a switch or draw a pick and pop opportunity, is Josh Hart initiating actions? Because Josh Hart, and for as much as I agree with that, this is a Karl Anthony Towns series, and we'll talk about that, I think Josh Hart is the pivot point, and if they cannot figure out how to make Josh Hart more of a strength instead of what the Celtics view him as, which is as a weakness, they're just not going to stand a chance. And that's, at least in large part, on Tibbs to be able to do that.
I hear you with all that. I guess my follow-up I have is, everything you said, I agree. I think it's right. Do you think, and I'm going to take a word from Kavitha Davidson, who sat here with us during the last watch party, and JD had his complaints about Tibbs when he sat with us here when we had a watch party. Do you think the coach can be malleable enough to make these changes? Will he do it? If we're all saying now is the time, J-Mac, this is the time, do you think he will do this? Do you have any faith that this will happen?
I think he can be malleable. I don't think he'll be as malleable as fans want him to be.
Okay.
And the unfortunate part is he will never tell you what he's actually thinking. So whatever reasons he may or may not have for doing X, Y, Z that fans want him to do, he's not going to tell you, even if it winds up costing him his job. So, but I do think that we will see more from Tibbs in terms of adjustments, in terms of pregame and in-game adjustments than maybe some fans are expecting.
All right, that's fair. We'll see how that plays out. CP, I want to bring it back to something you mentioned before, which is defense.
Yeah.
You said this series would start, if the Knicks are going to be competitive, with defense. We've seen the Knicks defense this season. I'm going to be a little kind here. Inconsistent, right?
Yeah.
Times it looked good. Sometimes it did not look so good. Do the Knicks have enough or the right defensive personnel to competitively defend the Celtics throughout a 7-game series?
Well, in the starting 5, it gets dicey. And it's not to pick on Towns, but there's just a lack there with him, whether it's up here or it's down here, in terms of how he moves in the pick and roll, his attention to detail, just being on the string. Sometimes he's just not there, and the Celtics are intentionally targeting him because they know that is the weak link. And so how are they going to play the Tatum pick and rolls? Is he going to be on the level? Because in the drop, Tatum's going to pick that apart. Or how are they going to play with Brunson? Is it going to be a hedge and recover? Well, you hedge and recover, and they swing that ball around. Then they're putting the Knicks in rotation, and 1 through 5, it's 3-pointers all day, right? So they're going to have a lot of challenges there. I expect Tibbs to give them different looks. I think you're going to have to go with a lot of different ways in terms, in addition to hedge and recover. Maybe they're switching on everything, and you live and die with the results. But make no mistake, OG on Tatum has to set that tone. He's had far more success than Mikal Bridges in this series. And look, as I was saying with Jason Tatum, he's on a superstar aura right now, almost Kobe-esque, where even as good as defense as you can play, he has better offense for all of it. And he doesn't seem to be disrupted, slowed down. He's gotten bigger, he's gotten faster, he's gotten stronger over the years. I mean, he's been fantastic. He's been an absolutely fantastic player. But look, if I got to put Mitch out there and sacrifice a couple of Towns minutes, then I got to do that. I need to have my best.
That's making adjustments there, right there.
That's an adjustment, right?
Yeah. Right.
And so, you look, because now if you're switching everything, like, I don't mind Mitchell Robinson being out there on a Tatum island, right? If I'm switching and now I got OG maybe pushing Porzingis off his spots and making sure he's not getting comfortable out there, like, I'm okay with that. And if those shots are going up, hey, I got my best rebounder out there to make sure that Boston doesn't get those second chance opportunities for more three-pointers.
That'll be the key. So you're talking about personnel, but I'm going to come over to you, J-Mac, with this, because how the Knicks defend the pick and roll, as CP just mentioned, is going to be paramount in this series, right? So how would you like to see them defend the pick and roll, particularly in action that's got Tatum, that's got Kristaps Porzingis in it? Those are the ones we've seen give the Knicks a lot of problems in this matchups against the Celtics. How would you like to see them defend the pick and roll here?
There's no secret formula. I mean, CP just hit on a few things. One, you got to switch it sometimes. We saw Towns switch it, those sorts of matchups, a few times in the third game that they played against each other, not as much in game 4. And Towns has shown the ability to hold up on switches before. He's held up on switches throughout his career at times, and I think he could do it again. You have to challenge him. I'm not saying all the time, but just some of the time. Number 2, when Towns isn't switching, or even when he is for that matter, and you are just when he's more aggressive at the level, it has to be the version of Karl Towns that we saw in Game 1 against Detroit, where he was a legitimately game-changing defensive force in the fourth quarter of that series. We hadn't seen that version of Karl Anthony Towns on defense all year long. And then it came out at arguably the most important time, because if he doesn't do that, they don't win Game 1. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing, and this is, again, you want to talk about Tom Thibodeau adjustments. What if Karl Anthony Towns is not guarding Kristaps Porzingis or Luke Cornett or whoever the big is on the floor at that time? What if you hide him on Drew Holiday, or even like a Derek White or a Jaylen Brown or someone like that, and you have OG Anunoby instead on Porzingis or Cornett or whoever the center is, and so you make that pick and roll much easier to switch. Now, if you have OG on the big, that would require, to go back to your point, Bridges on Tatum. I'm willing to live, and they're going to have to live with Bridges on Tatum for stretches of the series, because OG can't guard him for the entire time. And I know Tatum had his moments against Bridges in the last game, and it didn't look so great, but like, he made his life difficult, which is all you can ask Mikal Bridges to do. So I think that's like the breaking case of emergency glass that I'm waiting. That I don't think we'll see in Game 1 or Game 2. I'm wondering, as we get deeper into the series, might we see Towns guard someone other than Boston's 5?
Yeah, hey, Tibbs hasn't done that all year. We haven't seen him do that at all.
Not once.
Not once this year. So that would
unless Mitch is in. Sorry, unless Mitch is in the game, which that's a different animal.
It would be an interesting wrinkle. Feels like, I'm sure a lot of fans would agree to, be a nice time to try to bring out the wrinkle here against the Celtics. So we'll see. CP. We got to talk about Jalen Brunson. We got to talk about Captain Clutch. We saw what he did against Detroit. I'm out of words of things to say about Jalen Brunson at this point. We know what he is. You said he's a constant. You trust him in this. But when you look at this matchup and him going up against the Celtics backcourt, particularly Drew Holiday, who we know how good of a player he is there pressure on Brunson to outplay Drew Holiday and win this matchup? Especially, we know the Celtics are going to key on him. How much pressure is there on Brunson to be better in this matchup than Drew Holiday?
Cap eats pressure for breakfast, man. That's why they call him Captain Clutch, right?
I like
With
that.
the Captain Clutch box. He just does, man. And he's going to get a lot of attention from Drew, to Derek White, to Peyton Pritchard. It's going to be the same thing. Obviously, they're better defenders than Detroit. No disrespect to Osar Thompson, but as a collective. Right? And so obviously you're going to expect to see him get picked up 90 feet, and they're also going to be testing him when he's on the defensive side of things. If he gets caught out there on a Derek White or a Drew Holiday, those guys notorious for getting the Celtics second chance opportunities, crashing the glass, like the 50-50 balls. So Cap is also going to need to be out there on a string defensively. But in terms of responding to the pressure, like, I have no doubts that he's going to be there. You hope that he doesn't have, too many bad games in this series, but when he does, he typically bounces back. But if they have to take the ball out of his hands, I'm going to be interested in seeing, as Macri said, does Tibbs put Josh Hart on ball? Do they put Mikal Bridges on ball? Get Jalen Brunson some more off-ball opportunities, run him on some actions to get some more threes going, because your two best three-point shooters in that rotation, in that starting five, are Towns, Brunson, OG, right? So do they run Brunson a little bit more off-ball? If the Celtics do put two on the ball, do they go with Hart in the short roll, allow him to play make? That seems to be one of his strengths. So they have options, but they just have to try to shy away from the ball sticking too much in the half court.
Yeah.
Right? You can't have that happen. They have to constantly move that ball, try to get the Celtics in rotation, rebound as well, and they should be competitive.
Yeah, we've seen a little bit sometimes too much heliocentric ball with Jalen Brunson. As great as he is, we've seen too much of that with the Knicks offense, be it stagnant. You talked about how this is sort of a Cat series. I want to ask you about Cat, because Cat in the last series, we saw the great moments, right? We also saw some of the bad and the disappearing. And I said this too, if it probably wasn't for Jalen Brunson's big-time shot in Game 6, Cat's probably getting killed in that game for his performance here. What do you need to see out of Cat in this series to play well, especially if smaller players are put on him? We've seen the Celtics put Drew Holiday on him, J-Mac. What do you need to see him do in terms of dominating the front court in this series? What do you need to see from Cat?
Dex, I'll preface this by saying I don't only think Cat is the most important player or the biggest wild card in the series. I think you could argue that he's the biggest wild card in the entire second round of the NBA playoffs.
Wow.
Because you saw, so the last game Boston and New York played, Cat had 34 points on 21 shots. The Celtics outshot the Knicks, I think it was 38% to 29% from three on higher volume. OG didn't make a three the whole game. It was Brunson's second game back from injury. He was not himself yet. And yet the Knicks still should have won that game because of what Karl-Anthony Towns was able to do on the offensive end of the floor. And Towns didn't even play great on defense in that game either. But because he was able to punish the Celtics when he had the ball and punish specifically the Tatum matchup and say, you can't guard me. And he couldn't guard him in that game. You know, he only took three threes, made 1 of 3. But inside the arc, he was dominant. It was the most impressive game I think Karl Towns played in a Knick uniform. That's what he needs to do. Because if he could do that, and if he could bend the Celtics defense to say, all right, either we're going to send help or we're going to guard him with Kristaps Porzingis, or even if they stick with Tatum, if Towns merely wears Tatum out, and over the course of 2, 3, 4, hopefully 5, 6, 7 games, the more you wear that guy down, the less he's going to be able to do at the other end of the floor. It all comes back to Karl-Anthony Towns on the offensive end, and then, because there's not enough pressure there, it all comes down to him on the defensive end as well.
Right.
Because, I mean, I know what you said about Mitch, and I'll talk about Mitch in a little bit. I struggle to see a world where the Knicks are going to be able to score effectively enough or run efficient enough offense with Mitchell Robinson on the floor, unless it's just all offensive rebounds, and that's a dicey proposition.
Just to be clear, with Mitchell Robinson on the floor.
On the floor without Cat.
Without Cat.
Without Cat.
Okay, want to be clear.
Because the Celtics are a phenomenal defensive rebounding team, but I digress. But the point is, you're going to need to play Karl-Anthony Towns a good amount in this series. And if he does not hold up defensively, it doesn't matter. Nobody wants to see him in drop, but guess what? If you're in drop, you could be in a good drop, you could be in an active drop, you could be closer to the level, or you could be, I'm just here because I'm getting a paycheck and I'm required to come in today because it's my day at work. That's, like, I don't mean to be like that glib, but there are times where you see Towns defending, and that's what it looks like. It looks like he's there because he has to be there. Versus other times where he is making an impact, whether it's in drop, at the level, on switches, any of the above. So he dictates this series far more than Tibbs, Brunson, OG, anybody, Tatum, more than anybody. And it's in his hands. It's up to him what he wants to do with it.
All right, you got him as most important player in the second round of these NBA playoffs. It's pretty big. Putting a lot of pressure there on Bodega Cat.
So, I mean, it gets paid well enough. But.
That's a little bit. A guy who I think has had a lot of pressure from the Knicks fan base has been Mikal Bridges. Mikal Bridges, I thought CP had a really interesting first round series. Thought he was pretty good defensively. And he was big time in Game 6, as you mentioned earlier. What do you need to see from him in this series? Do you think there's another level up for him offensively? And then you talked about the challenges for him defensively against Jason Tatum. I don't think he was quite as bad as some people might have said in the last game that the Knicks and Celtics played. He made Tatum work. But what do you need to see from him on both the offensive and defensive end here in this series?
Defensively, just maintain his aggressiveness. You know, I thought that's where he was very impactful against Cade Cunningham. Now, in this Boston assignment, he's going to get some Jaylen Brown. He's going to get some Jason Tatum. Both those guys stronger than Mikal Bridges. Both those guys will want to take it to the basket. I mean, I think Jason Tatum in that Orlando series was averaging about 10 free throw attempts a game. And so he's going to have to be careful there, but still maintain his physicality, maintain his aggressiveness, get after it on the boards. He's going to have to help rebound, especially when the Knicks go with their traditional starting five. And then offensively, it's hard to tell how much opportunities he's going to get, especially when you're in that unit with Brunson, with Town. Sometimes OG's taking it there. So just be efficient when that ball is in your hands. Who's running with that second unit primarily? Is he going to be out there with Towns and that second unit? You can run actions with Mikal Bridges. I love Mikal Bridges in the high pick and roll. Let him get downhill and get into that mid-range shot. Some of the half-court sets that they would run for RJ to get downhill, where RJ's going straight to the basket. Mikal's not going for that lane, but he's gonna stop at that 5-foot mark and drop that mid-range. So that's how they've kept him engaged, and I thought that's how he was able to have a good series against the Pistons.
Yeah, I was encouraged by what we saw from Bridges in the first round. I'm just intrigued to see how that carries over. Is any carryover for him in this round? He seems pretty motivated. I think he's had a lot of adjustment this season.
You think?
Yeah. But you know what? I don't think the fans have maybe been as patient with him as that adjustment, right? And look, you got to show it in the playoffs. We'll see. He played a little bit of edge. We haven't seen that from him all the time. I remember we was at a watch party for the Cavs, and I saw you. We talked about where was the edge from Mikal Bridges, and he showed some edge against Detroit.
Well, I would say this with Bridges also, like against that Boston defense, if they're going to get stuck in that half court, next to Brunson, he's their most reliable ball handler and shot creator, and it's going to be vital. And so they can't shy away from him because they may need him to bail him out, deep into the shot clock, like, hey, put the ball on the floor and make a play in your mid-range. So I think he's also going to be very important in this series.
All right, not quite as J-Mac will say, not as quite as important as Cat, but he will be important for sure. J-Mac, we got to talk about the bench. The Knicks haven't had much of a bench. They're playing like 5.5 guys out here. Deuce McBride was not good in the first round.
No.
23 points in 6 games. It's not going to get it done. What are your expectations for the bench here in this series? And who needs to step up? Is it Deuce McBride? Is this Mitchell Robinson? Is it maybe we're expecting too much of Campaign? Is it Campaign? Who needs to step up here off the bench in the series? Because it feels like the bench could be important for the Knicks in this series. I would, if they're going to be competitive and or win, feels like you would need the bench. So who needs to step up for them?
Well, who do I expect to step up versus who that needs to step up, I think are two different answers for me. The guy who honestly, and he wasn't very good after the game one saving moment that he had, but I expect Campaign to show up, because I think he's a guy that's been there before. He's been in deep playoff runs. I don't think he's just afraid of the moment. He didn't play that well again after game one, but he saved their bacon then. The guy that needs to step up to me is Deuce. And I'll talk about Mitch a little bit later, but I want to say in regards to Deuce, again, something Tibbs always says, you don't have to shoot well to play well. It's really tough for Deuce McBride to have an effective outing if he does not make his open threes. This team, the second they traded Dante DiVincenzo, they traded their most reliable quick trigger guy from behind the arc. I mentioned Campaign. Campaign has a quick trigger, but there's reasons that Campaign is a guy you don't really probably want playing more than 8 to 10 minutes a game. We know Deuce McBride could play 20, 30. I mean, last postseason, I think he played 40 minutes in one or two of the postseason games. So we know he's capable. And he's their only quick trigger guy. He needs to take threes. He needs to make threes. He needs to have confidence. And then on the defensive end, he had some issues defensively. Guarding Dennis Schroeder, a couple other instances there against Detroit. He needs to be the best version of himself. Again, talking about breaking case of emergency moves that Tibbs could make. If Towns isn't having the best series, and let's say Mitch is not the answer, I mean, is there a small ball unit that the Knicks could run out there with OG at the 5 and then Bridges, Hart, Brunson, and then who's your fifth guy going to be? It's probably going to be Deuce. I could see the whole series going by without us seeing that. But if he is playing well enough, all of a sudden that at least becomes more of an option, as opposed to how he played against Detroit and really how he's been playing since he came back from injury. And that's the only reason I have all the faith in the world in Deuce McBride. I just don't think he's right physically. Because
since he came back from that late season knee injury,
it hasn't been the same, and the numbers all reflect that. So, but that's the guy. If you're asking me, the one guy that I'm like, if this guy steps up, it'll make a big impact. I think it's Deuce.
Oh, with Deuce McBride there, yeah, we'll see. Knicks need a little bit more offense and some defense as well too off the bench. All right, we're coming to the end of this. So this is what I call the big time questions for this, and I got this for you both. We know that the Celtics are heavily favored in the series. There's no doubt about that. They've been the better team. They are the defending champions. In your eyes, what's it going to take for the Knicks to pull off the upset against the heavily favored Celtics? What all has to go right for the Knicks to pull off this upset? I'll start with you first, CP.
I think it's going to take a team that we probably haven't seen yet. You know, and maybe it's that team that played that Celtics team in the last matchup of the regular season. And hey, Jalen Brunson wasn't 100% yet.
Just the second game back,
but
right.
You saw intensity. You saw the defense was ratcheted up. Karl Anthony Towns dominating when he needed to dominate inside. He only took 3 threes. Mitchell Robinson making his impact in that game. You know, the big block of Jason Tatum at the perimeter. But again, the late game execution did him in. Was it the players not executing? Was it the coach? You know, they were not on the same page, whatever it was. And we've seen that time and time again. Can they fix those ills in time for this series? Time will tell, but it's going to need to be that. They're going to need to play those perfect games. We know, if they keep it close, number 11 will be there for them in the end to take it. But with Boston's high-octane offense, and the way that they play on both ends, damn near on the string, it's going to be very difficult, man.
Man, I don't know if that was encouraging for the Knicks fans. You're like, they have to play damn near perfect basketball.
That's how I see it, man. With the champs, that's how I see it, man.
How do you see this, J-Mac? What's it going to take for this Knicks team to pull off the upset?
I'm not going to belabor the point. Towns has to have the series of his life. He needs to have the best playoff series of his career. I mean, I love Mitchell Robinson. I think there is a place for Mitchell Robinson to be impactful in the series. I also know against the Pistons defense that is not nearly as good as the Celtics defense can be. The Knicks scored 97 points per 100 possessions when Mitch was on the floor in the last series. And they had a 17% turnover rate because they couldn't throw him the ball and trust that he could catch it. So if you think they're going to ignore Josh Hart, at least Josh Hart can make you pay if you do that. Mitchell Robinson, again, if he's not grabbing offensive rebounds, and I'm not saying he can't do that, he could. I think it's going to be a challenge, and then he's struggled with pick and pop offenses in the past. So I think you're just going to need to play Towns close to 40 minutes a game, and he's going to need to be at his best. And I'll say this try to be encouraging. If Towns plays up to his capabilities, and not like stuff we haven't seen before, if he just does what we've seen and puts it all together over the course of however many games the series lasts, I think the Knicks can win it. I really do. It's about can we see that?
Towns broke out. He had a pretty good playoff run last year, except for the conference finals. You wonder if he has this in him, or it might be the reference point that you made. Maybe it's the last game the Knicks played against the Celtics. Maybe it's that version of Karl Anthony Towns that could excite Knicks fans and you guys in thinking that they could win this. All right, prediction time, guys. This is it, the moment of truth. I want to see how optimistic you guys are. What's your prediction for this series? J-Mac, I'm going to start with you first on this one. What's your prediction for this series? I think you were right in the last series. You predicted Knicks in 6, right?
I did.
You predicted Knicks in 6 against the Pistons. I had Knicks in 5. I was wrong, but whatever.
Should have been right.
Should have been right. What's your prediction for this series? What do you got?
So, let me say off the top, I don't think it's that the Knicks can't win this series. I think they can. Here's the issue. If you made a list of the 10 most important things for each of these two teams to accomplish, and you look at the Knicks list and you look at the Celtics list, and you say, all right, how many of those things does each team need to check off to win? I think all things being equal, like Jason Tatum doesn't get injured or something crazy like that, I think the Knicks need to check like 8 of those boxes, maybe 7.5, maybe 8.5, something like that, for them to win the series. I think the Celtics could get away with checking like 4 boxes, 4.5, maybe 5, and they still win the series. They are a team with fewer weaknesses, and because they have fewer weaknesses, they don't have to do as much at a higher or at a high enough level to be able to win. And because I just think there is an easier path, I'm taking the Celtics. I'm taking the Celtics in 6. If you told me Celtics in 7, if you told me Knicks in 7, I would not be shocked. I really wouldn't be shocked. I think the series is going to be 2-2 after 4 games. But I just think the Celtics have more answers right now. And I think at the end of the day, you have to trust the track record. We've watched this Knicks team for 88 games now. I think they've shown us kind of who they are. And who they are is a team that has some very high highs, awesome highs, but also some pretty low lows. And those lows come more frequently than I think you can have them come and still expect to beat a team the caliber of which we're going to see now in this round. So I'm taking Celtics in 6.
All right, Celtics in 6.
Yeah.
What you got?
Hit the nail on the head in terms of what this Knicks team needs to do. My heart wants to say Knicks in 7.
Say it with your heart. Say
listen,
it with your heart.
I know. I got to
Please.
say it with my heart. I would love to say it with my heart, man. But look, just being a realist and watching this game and watching the Celtics, man, they're the champs for a reason, and they can go through this series without Tatum or Brown having their best series. That's how deep this team is. That's how they execute on both ends of the floor, including the coaching factor. So I'm going to go with Celtics in 6, unfortunately. But, again, the Knicks have opportunities to win games in this series if they go out there and execute. And their big 2 have great games. They get after it. Create more offense by playing fast, right? They always talk about the pace. The pace was something that hurt them at points in this Detroit series where they're like, man, we got to play faster. When they played faster, what'd you see? 15-point leads, 10-point leads, double-digit leads. They were the Knicks, right? But then they get into those ruts where game of runs and, man, they start panting. Where do we go? They start getting out of themselves. That's where I think the Celtics are a little bit more crisp in terms of executing the championship caliber experience, where the Knicks are still learning how to counter those runs, especially from a coaching aspect. So I'm going to go Celtics in 6, but my heart's still saying Knicks in 7.
Heart says Knicks in 7.
Yeah.
I'm with you both. We all agree on this. I said Celtics in 6. I think it's going to be 2-2 after 4 as well, J-Mac. I think the Knicks are going to be an even with this, but I just think the Celtics have too much experience. I think depth is an issue. I don't trust the Knicks bench right now. Right, until I see it, I just don't trust it. And I've been saying all season, I think the Knicks are probably still a year away from next year's team is probably better than this year's team. There are things on the margin they need to fix. I'd love to see the Knicks win in 7. I'd love to see Knicks in 7. I'd love for your heart to be happy, the fans to be less stressed. I was hoping one of you guys would say Knicks in 4. But, you know, we can all wish for things that isn't going to happen. One thing I'll follow up, because I don't remember what we all said here when we previewed the season. And I had both you guys sitting with me, and we talked about I think I asked a question to you guys about what would constitute a successful season for the Knicks. Let's say all our predictions, we all predicted Celtics in 6. Let's say that happens. And I also want to add that the games are competitive. Let's say all 6 games are competitive, and the Knicks lose in 6. Is this a successful season for you?
For me, it is.
I think you're being a realist by saying that.
Without question, because they're, like you just said, the depth was never going to be there this year. They were, when they made the moves that they made, they were hamstrung up against the apron. They didn't have the fungible contracts to move at the deadline to acquire a real piece. I mean, Precious Achiuwa was out there playing 40 minutes a night in key games this season. I mean, I like Precious, but no. You need, if it's 6 close games, that means that you went toe-to-toe with a team that, again, on paper is unquestionably, I hate to say this, better than you in terms of a team. Not to say that the Knicks top 2, not to say that Tatum's better than Brunson or Tatum and Brown are better than Brunson and Cat or all the way down the line, but in terms of how this team has been composed, that's the key for me. So if they were close, that means they figured something out. And I look forward, I hope that's what happens, and I look forward to seeing what that is, because that would be super encouraging for me heading into the offseason.
I think that's fair. What do you say?
Yeah, I agree. Competitive series against the champs. If you went out that way, I can't hate it. this team was just composed, just put together. And look, their top 2 guys had an outstanding season. You had 2 All-Stars come out of this season. As Macri said, we knew the depth was not going to be there. So look, for them to go into this series, I still give them a puncher's chance. But if they were to go down swinging against the champs, I wouldn't be mad at it. And as he said, it gives you some encouragement, some hope that with some luck and some tweaks to the depth of the roster, maybe it's the coach, we'll see, they take it up another notch in the following season.
Yeah, I think that's being fair. I think that's being realistic. Now, I guarantee you guys are doing your shows. Some fans are not going to want to hear that. They're going to be like, this was conference finals a bust. They didn't make it. What I would say to that is, look at the Cavaliers this year. Look at the jump they made from just changing. I'm not saying they should change the coach, but they did change their coach, and they went from being on the outside to now people saying they're NBA championship contenders.
But also look at the Celtics.
And their process. You talk about their process of what they.
This has been a decade in the making to them winning the championship last year. Yeah. I understand there were different pieces in and out along the way, but like it usually takes a long time. So to expect that they were going to get there in year 1. Look, and maybe they still do. I don't know, but I don't think there's any shame in if they, again, it's a competitive series, like you say.
Competitive, yeah.
Then yeah.
Got a quick bonus question for you guys that I didn't even tell you guys we're going to talk about because my producer was like, I have to ask you guys this. We've had people come up here and we've had all these talks during the watch-alongs about Carmelo Anthony's number being retired.
Oh, okay.
And I know you're a big Melo guy, so I kind of know where this might go for you. Some people are saying, oh, Melo's number should be retired. I've heard some Knicks fans saying, doesn't matter to me, don't really care. Some people saying it should not be retired. Another point that's always brought up is if you're going to retire Carmelo Anthony's number, you should also retire Bernard King's number. What do you guys say to both of those guys getting their number retired? Should that happen or not?
I say yes to both. I mean, it's been a long time for King, and the fact if you did it now, it would be a little odd, frankly.
Yeah. Because of how long it's been, right?
Because of how long it's been. That said, Melo, what are we even talking about here? Like, he was the most important person in the franchise over a 20-year span. It's not like he didn't win. He won. Individually, he was brilliant. I don't understand how there could be a conversation about it.
I agree. Some people say, like, no, some people saying he didn't get past the second round. He didn't win any championship in New York. So a lot of people in here haven't won. I think it's a no-brainer. Also, I'm fine with Bernard King's number getting retired. I know you're fine with Melo's number getting retired. I don't really got to ask you that. But how do you feel about Bernard King?
Both. I put both in there.
You put both in there?
I put both in there. I mean, just based on, Bernard King's name still rings bells to that generation of fans. He meant that much to that generation, those fans that grew up in that era. And so, yeah, man, I put Bernard up there. I put Melo up there as well. I think it'd be a nice event that the Garden can build around. You know, they're big on PR and things of that nature. But yeah, put those guys in there, man.
Oh yeah, anytime you throw a number up in the rafters, you get some fans excited and people out to see it. It's a good thing. See, my producer Nick, he's smiling now because he's like, Dex, I'm telling these people who've been saying this, they're crazy. They probably are. But yeah, it's good to see.
I hate to do this. Even if you're a Knicks fan and you think that Carmelo Anthony doesn't deserve to have his number on the rafters, if you want the team to do well, that would be the lowest hanging fruit from a PR perspective. Carmelo Anthony is either the most beloved or second or third most beloved retired player around the league right now. He's still a face of the league. He just signed the deal to do NBC. NBC.
Yep, to be NBC.
Like, this is easy money here. A win around the league. Oh, look at the Knicks. They're doing the right thing by their guy. They didn't try to get cute. Like, take it.
I think the people, I'm playing devil's advocate, the people who are on the other side, I think their thing is that they're one of those people who believe teams should have high standards in terms of retiring numbers. My argument to that is the Knicks have had a pretty high standard in terms of retiring numbers. There are fans I've heard out there who say the Knicks should have retired John Stark's number, the Knicks should have retired Charles Oakley's number. Love both those guys. Starks have been here on the show.
Yeah.
I've said no because those guys didn't win and were maybe the second or third best player in team behind Patrick Ewing. So the Knicks have had a standard, right? And it hasn't just been about winning. You have to mean something a lot to the franchise, which I think if you look up in the Garden, everybody's numbers up there has meant something to the franchise. You can't question it.
Yeah.
My argument always is, if you're sitting, all of us are fathers, you're sitting with your kids, and they look up in the rafters and they say, Hey, Dad, can you tell me about number 7? Can you tell me about number 30? You should be able to explain why that person meant something to the franchise. And if you all those numbers with the Knicks, I think you can do that. And if you put 7 and 30 up there, you absolutely can do that.
I think it's pretty easy.
I'm with you, man.
That's it. Yeah. It's not like you know what I'm saying? It's like you can, and they also, I guess what I also add to that is they help define a era or history of part of Knicks basketball. You talked about Bernard King and what he means to that era of people in the 80s. When you talk to folks about that around the Knicks or people who just watch basketball, they'll be like, he was getting buckets. He electrified the city. I think you can say the same thing about Melo. So it's fine.
And the thing is with Melo, man, like, again, you can talk about, he didn't win championship. There was such a dark period prior to that, man. And after. Melo, and after. That's
a good point.
So that Melo era, look at the teams, look at the roster, right? And there's the naysayers will say, well, he didn't wait and he was a ball hog and all that. Look, man, they still made the playoffs 3 years, right? 3 years in a row with Melo. He was third in MVP that year with the 54-win Woodson team. Sure, they fell short. It was disappointing, but Carmelo brought a lot of excitement, at least for me, in terms of Knicks basketball in the Garden. He made him watchable again.
Yeah, but you're somebody who enjoys the ride. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
You enjoy the process.
Yeah.
Some people are not out here enjoying the process. Guys, enjoy the series against the Celtics. I think it should be a good one. Let the people know what you guys have going on. You guys always have things going on during the playoffs. What do you guys both have going on during this round?
Yeah, sure. So this camera? Which camera?
Look right at this camera.
So we'll be at the Ainsworth on Monday for Game 1, Cinco de Mayo special. Join us for Game 1. We'll be there at 5 o'clock. That's the Ainsworth on 45 East 33rd Street, 5 o'clock.
Yeah, and Knicks Film School, just check all of our social accounts. They'll tell you about watch parties. They'll tell you about pre-games, post-games, stuff that we have going on the Patreon account. It's all kinds of stuff. Knicks Film School is your, keyword for all that, all those goodies.
I've been disappointed. Been happy doing these watch-alongs, but I haven't been able to come to your guys' events, so I haven't been able to pull up. But you guys seem like you're having a lot of fun there, so it's good. Enjoy the series. Fans, enjoy the series. Just hope it's competitive. That's all we're hoping for. Just hoping for a competitive series. These are my guys, the Dean of Knicks Film School, Jonathan Macri, founder of KnicksFanTV and host, CP the Franchise. Guys, appreciate y'all as always to preview and break things down. This was fun. I'm gonna check on your stress levels during the series. Make sure you're okay. But this was fun as usual.
Dex, I told you I don't know what you're talking about with stress.
Well, no. See, CP I know is he's in a good place. Some other people might be stressed out. Don't let the fans stress you out.
Yeah.
Appreciate you, my guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
The Knicks are heating up.
All right, now that we've broken things down for the Knickerbockers in this series, it's only right that we take a little time out to know the enemy. So let's look at things from the Celtics side. Joining me for this breakdown is a reporter who covers the Celtics for Celtics CLNS and Celtics blog. She's also the host of the You Got Boston podcast. The one and only Noah Dalzell joins me now. Noah, how's it going?
It's going great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, always good to have you, Noah, and talk about some Celtics hoops. So let's get right into it because, you know this, the Celtics, they swept the regular season series against the Knicks. What stood out to you the most about how they matched up in those games with the Knicks? And do you think that success that the Celtics saw in those 4 games can translate to this postseason series?
Yeah, I think there are definitely things that can translate. I mean, they shot well in those 4 games. That's the biggest thing that stood out. But you look all the time, and I think people are very confident in the Celtics' chances, and I am too, but ultimately the playoffs, not necessarily going to follow on what happened in those 4 regular season games. And so New York's going to have to limit the Celtics 3-point shooting. We just saw Orlando do it with a lot of success. I think they kind of have to do that in order to be able to keep up, and that's true for any team. And I just didn't see a lot of signs during the regular season that they have the personnel, or at least they weren't doing it, but maybe as time has kind of gone by here and they have a blueprint for another team doing it a little bit more effectively, they can kind of work off that. But that's the key to slowing the Celtics team down, and New York kind of has to do that better than they did during the regular season.
Yeah, they're going to have to do that. Easier said than done. Celtics can get up a lot of threes, and also they're very efficient in terms of making those threes that they do get up. Now, one of the matchups, Noah, I think is really interesting is Jalen Brunson versus the backcourt of Boston, right? Derek White and Drew Holiday looks to be one of the defining matchups of this series. How do you see Boston's defensive guards approaching the challenge of trying to slow down Jalen Brunson?
Yeah, so there's no stopping Jalen Brunson. He's a player I love, have a lot of respect for what he's done in this first round was remarkable to watch. And we all know that great offense beats a great defender any day, and that's kind of what happens in this league. The thing that Boston has on their side is they have at least 3 defenders they can put on him at various points. Derek White, Drew Holiday, and Jaylen Brown, I think, are all going to take, some time guarding him and hopefully stay out of foul trouble. But the reality is that he doesn't have like a guy that he's going to hunt on the floor. Not that he really needs that, but that's kind of the Celtics' MO, is they don't really have weak defenders ever on the floor. They all can kind of hold their own. And so, I think the key to the Celtics is going to be either going to just really try to double him and let, Josh Hart beat them, or they're going to do what they usually do, which is kind of let the superstar player go off, but limit everything else. And I have a feeling they're going to do the latter option, but we'll know pretty quickly into this game. So I think Jalen Brunson might get his, and I think Boston will probably live with that. And we just saw like Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner, got theirs in this series. The thing is, I actually think the Knicks role players are a lot better than maybe the Celtics fans think they are. So that's going to be the X factor to me, is how everybody else performs. But Jalen Brunson, there's no stopping him. It's just you do have Drew Holiday, one of the best guard defenders in this generation. Jaylen Brown, who can really, really bother opponents and has kind of been doing it for the last few years. He typically guards the opposing team's best player. I don't think Derek White's going to take the matchup, but he is the healthiest of the 3, so he has that edge too.
Yeah, that's something I was worried about too, with the health of Drew Holiday and the hamstring. Would Derek White see some time on Jalen Brunson? But you're right, Noah. Celtics have a lot of people they can throw on the Knicks superstar in Jalen Brunson. In terms of looking at this Celtics roster, right, we know the headliners are going to be Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, but who's your X factor for the Celtics in this series? Maybe a player that might not be in the headlines, but you think could swing a game or 2 here. Who's the X factor for Boston?
So he's in the headlines, but I still think he's the X factor, and that's Kristaps Porzingis, who has been great for the Celtics during the regular season, really struggled in the first round, and really wasn't much of a part of their playoffs in the last championship run. He only played in 5 games that whole run because of the injuries that he suffered. And so he really struggled in the first round. He was their most inefficient player. He was one of the most inefficient players in the entire NBA in the first round of the playoffs. And some of that was the Magic's physicality. But if he finds a rhythm, like he did during the regular season, now you're talking about 3 stars on the Celtics team, 3 guys that can go for 30 on any given night. And so I believe in him. I think that this is a good matchup for him. I think you're going to see him pop a lot. You're going to see him stretch the floor, shoot a lot of threes, something that he really wasn't able to do against Orlando. But he's just not like Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, even Derek White at this point. They're so seasoned in the playoffs that I know what to expect from them. They're going to give you what they're going to give you. You can try to slow them down, but they're such proven playoff performers. And Porzingis, I think he's very talented, but he just doesn't have the same track record of being effective this time of year. A lot of it is due to injuries. And so he's a little bit more of an X factor in that way, but his ceiling is so high that he can be the best player on the floor on any given night. And that's kind of what I'm not sure what version of him we're going to get in the series.
Yeah, well, we saw that in the last matchup between the Knicks and Celtics at the Garden in the regular season, how effective he was in terms of, like you said, shooting the ball from deep, stretching the floor. With him, it's just about being available. So we'll see how he plays in this series. Looking further from a Celtics perspective, Noah, what is the biggest concern, if there are any? Because it seems like the Celtics fans are pretty confident in this series, but what is the biggest concern heading into this matchup with the Knicks? Is it the Knicks' 2 All-Stars and Brunson and Towns, or is it perhaps New York's ability to slow down the game? We know the Knicks do not like to play with a lot of pace, but what's the biggest concern in your eyes when it comes to this Knickerbocker team?
Yeah, probably number 1 for the Celtics side is health, just because they've just dealt with a lot of random things so far. Drew Holiday missed the last 3 games of the first round with a right hamstring strain, and honestly, that made me realize, I knew how important he was, but those 3 games really highlighted just how critical he is for this team. Even if he's only scoring 10 points and grabbing 5 rebounds, he just does so much for Boston. So it sounds like he's probably going to be good to go. He did practice this week, but without him, they lose a lot of their versatility defensively, and also he's a guy that can really tire out Jalen Brunson. I'm assuming Jalen Brunson's probably going to guard him, so I like him offensively as well. But on the Knicks side, I think the Celtics game plan, a lot of it is going to be giving guys like Josh Hart open threes. Like I think you're going to see Kristaps Porzingis roaming, and I actually really believe in a lot of the Knicks role players. I'm a big fan of Josh Hart. I'm a big fan of Mikal Bridges. Like I really like a lot of these guys individually. I'm sure Celtics fans are not going to like some of the positive things I have to say about them. And so it worries me a little, the game plan of just kind of living with their open shots. That's kind of the only way this team is going to go down. And I just 2023 Eastern Conference Finals against Miami, the game plan was conceding some open looks for some guys, and we all know how that turned out. So that's their pathway to victory. I think that, if you're Josh Hart, you have a massive opportunity here, I would imagine, at least through the first few games, to kind of make them respect your shot or make them pay. And I always have a little bit of concern for variant shooting, although they haven't been conceding as many looks as they used to the worst shooters on the floor. And I don't think Josh Hart qualifies as like some terrible shooter that they're going to give everything to, but that variance is always something that could swing a couple games for sure.
Yeah, and Josh Hart is interesting, though, because he has been hesitant to shoot a lot throughout the season. He has shot the ball willingly. We saw it in the last round, hit over 50% of his threes. And now I don't know if that's going to continue, and I think the shot will be there for him against the Celtics, but it is going to be interesting to see if he can make the shot, how long the Celtics give him the shot. So could be a huge X factor here in this series. Thus far, I know we've just been through one round. Celtics disposed of the Magic in 5 games, but what's your impressions of the Celtics' playoff intensity so far? Because, it's always interesting when a team comes back after winning a championship. Do they look like a team that learned from winning it all last year? What's your impressions of the series so far?
Yeah, definitely intense. That was an intense first round series, despite the fact that, it was a gentleman's sweep. I still thought that it was, a bunch of battles in a row. They never really had a championship hangover this year. They won 61 games. They came out of the gates swinging early on. They did struggle in December and January, but I didn't necessarily think that was like a championship hangover type thing. My biggest takeaway so far is that Tatum looks like he's primed to have a really great playoff run. And he had a good playoff run last year, but he didn't shoot the ball great. First round, shot the ball pretty well. 36% from 3, which is a little bit above his season average, but he finished that series with 35 plus points in the final 3 games against Orlando. So I think he and Porzingis said this to me. I asked him about what he's seeing from Tatum, and he said I think he has a killer instinct that he didn't have at this level when I got to the Celtics last fall. And I think you're seeing that a little bit. So on an individual level, I think he's primed to have perhaps what could be the best playoff run of his life. It doesn't mean he's going to have it, but I think that the stars seem to be aligning in that sense. And I think this team has a lot of confidence and a lot of poise. Like their knock in years past used to be like, get the game close and, how are they going to execute in crunch time? Like they might not. And they've become a really good crunch time team. And I know New York is too. And that definitely instills some fear, kind of what Jalen Brunson's been able to do, in late game situations this season. But I think you see them play with a lot more poise than they used to. So I see a very similar team to last year's team. I do think the other teams in the league have gotten better. And so their championship chances are a little bit lower than they were last year for only that reason.
All right, we'll see. Yeah, they've been looking good so far. Tough series against the Magic. Now I'll see if that confidence continues here against the Knicks. I guess the last thing for me here, Noah, is the Celtics, they're heavy favorites. The Boston fans are confident. What's your prediction for the series? What are you going with and why?
I'm going with Celtics in 5. I think I definitely wouldn't. I never pick a sweep because I think it's just really hard to beat a team 4 games in a row. At the same time, I do think that there's they have a lot of advantages here, and especially I think the Knicks defense is going to have to. There's a lot more things to exploit than Orlando's defense did. So I have Celtics in 5. I think it's going to be 5 close games. The main reason, though, and so this is a huge disclaimer, I started covering the team last year. I've never seen a series go past 5 games. They beat every team last year in 5 or 4 games, and this year the first time was 5. So until I see a team that's like just head and shoulders above the other teams they face, I kind of default to Celtics in 5. That being said, though, I do think fans are a little bit overconfident, just because at the end of the day, Celtics could be playing the Charlotte Hornets in a 2-game series. It's just there's so much variance in basketball, and there are winners on the Knicks side. I watched them play when they were in college. Those guys, these are proven winners ultimately, and they haven't necessarily done it in the NBA yet at a high level, but they're not a team that I think is just going to fold. So I think these are going to be 5 good games. I wouldn't be surprised if it went 6, but I do have them winning this series.
Okay, and you got this being a tough series. Some people think it'll be not as competitive because of the regular season, but you have this being a tough series, and I think it'll be good in the New York
second
Boston
round
rivalry.
series. I feel like I feel like they have to be competitive. You look around. This was at the end of the day, this Knicks team had the 5th best record in the league this year. So everybody's pointing to the sweep. But
you know why, Noah? Because I think, and you know this, it's people think the gap is so big because of what we saw in the regular season, right? And how the Knicks, the Celtics, they had 3 double-digit wins against the Knicks in the regular season. I guess, let me follow up with you on this. One last thing for you. It sounds to me like you don't think the gap is as big as what we saw in the regular season. Is that the case? Or do you think just teams evolve, teams get better, and the Knicks have some winners, as you said, and the gap might be a little bit closer than some may think right now?
I think the gap is big at their best, but I think there's just so much variance in basketball that, like was the gap, and not to keep bringing up 2023, but like that Celtics team was so much better than that Miami team on paper.
Agreed.
And they fell down 3-0, right? So it's just an understanding that anything can happen if the right guys get hot and you have a bad week at work. That's what Jason Tatum always says. It's a bad week at work sometimes. And if the bad week at work happens in May, you're eliminated. So I think it's just more of an understanding that anything can happen. And if you're playing a team of guys that are unproven and have never really been there before, I don't really buy that anything can happen. But this Knicks team has the pieces to make some noise. That's kind of where my thinking comes in. At the same time, I also just don't put that much weight into the regular season and into like a 4-game matchup. Like the Bucks beat the Pacers, I think, in 3 out of the 4 games during the season, and we also how the playoffs went. So just you see that all the time, that it doesn't necessarily translate. I do have concerns about the fact that the Knicks struggled against a lot of the league's best teams, that it wasn't just Boston. Like I do think that's a little bit of a larger sample. So I am picking the Celtics in 5. It's just every series is tough. Orlando was a tough series too. You could have easily said, this is a team that has won 20 games fewer than the Celtics. This is going to be a cakewalk. Nothing about that series was a cakewalk. So I think it's just hard. There's so much talent in all these NBA teams. It's just hard to say any series is going to be really easy. So when I see Celtics fans saying, "Oh, this is going to be a sweep," well, let's already look at the next round, I'm like, I get a little nervous for them, just because that's usually not how things pan out.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I even felt, with talking to Knicks fans about this in the Detroit series, a lot of people felt that the Knicks should just dispose of them easily. And I said the talent gap is maybe not as wide as you might have thought it would be. Here's the only thing that makes me a little bit nervous, Noah. You have yet to see the Celtics sweep a series. And I'm like, it's Noah. One time. So you have seen it once. I was like, okay. So you've seen it once. I was like, maybe Noah's due. We hope that it doesn't happen now.
Yeah.
That's not
I will say, though, the sweep was the most competitive series they had last year versus the Pacers in the conference finals. That was a sweep, but they had like some late game magic. I don't know if you remember that series.
I remember, yeah.
But so, a sweep doesn't always mean that it was a cakewalk. But yeah, I think that was the only sweep I've seen so far.
That's the only sweep. I forgot that it was a sweep, and a lot of those games were close and came down to the final possession. I think in like 2 or 3 of those games in the series. So, yeah, you're right about that. We'll see. This should be a fantastic one. Looking forward to seeing your coverage of it. And here in New York, that is Noah Dalzell, covers the Celtics for Celtics CLNS and Celtics blog. Also check her out hosting You Got Boston podcast. It is a great one. Noah, I appreciate you for joining me on New York Got Game, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so we've broken it all down. We've heard it from the Knicks side. We've heard it from the Celtics side. And this series is here. Knicks versus Celtics, round 2. How's it all going to play out? How's it all going to go down? I personally have no idea. Do I think this is an important series for the Knicks in terms of where they are as a franchise right now? Yeah, I do. I think there's a lot that needs to be shown here. I think they need to be competitive in this series. I think the head coach, Tom Thibodeau, needs to show that he can make adjustments in this series. How he coaches this series is going to be very vital in terms of what the Knicks are going to do. But this is what this season has always been about. It's been about gaining information about this Knicks team as they made the additions of Mikal Bridges and Karl-Anthony Towns. How is this team going to come together? Can and how will they be able to compete against the Boston Celtics? That was a goal, to build a team that could compete against the Celtics. Now, the Knicks have their chance, and they have a chance to gain information. Can the Knicks beat the Celtics? Sure, it's possible. Are the Celtics the better team as the defending champions? Yeah, I think so. But this is still a very valuable experience. Team building is still very hard. It doesn't all come at once. And the Knicks have a chance to build their team, look at their team, and see where they need to go moving forward. So a lot is riding on the series. I think it could be fun. I think the Knicks can be competitive. It should be really interesting. And look, it's Boston versus New York. Whenever you get a Boston versus New York team rivalry in whatever sport, it's a fun one to watch, and I'm definitely going to enjoy watching these. Speaking of watching this series, we're going to continue to do our New York Got Game watch parties. First one going down on Monday at 7 o'clock. Myself, Brian Fonseca, and our guy Gerard Hector from True Hoop will be joining us for Game 1. We'll announce more of the guests coming up in Game 2. Speaking of guests, got to thank our guests that joined us on the show today, the great CP the Franchise and Jonathan Macri of KnicksFanTV and Knicks Film School, respectively, and also Noah Dalzell, who joined us to give her take on the Celtics side of things, a great Celtics reporter that she is. We also have to thank the great people who work on this show, my producer, Nick Federico, Production assistants, Tommy Cohen. Editor, Corey Porter, doing a great job on the show. I'm Dexter Henry signing off. Hope that you enjoyed the preview. Game 1 right around the corner. We'll catch you next time in another edition of New York Got Game.
And thanks for watching New York Got Game. Boom shakalaka.